Hey there, and welcome to This Explainer. Have you ever wondered if your eyes are actually playing tricks on you? I mean, we usually trust what we see right in front of our faces, right? But it turns out our hidden, completely unconscious anxieties can literally warp our basic sense of reality. Today, we're diving into some incredibly fascinating science that proves our own minds might actually be acting like movie directors, literally changing the speed of the physical world around us based entirely on how we feel. So let's kick things off by imagining a car crash. If you've ever been in a dangerous accident or even just heard a survivor describe one, they almost always report that time seemed to completely slow down during the threat. It feels exactly like a movie suddenly playing at half speed. Now, researchers call this subjective time expansion. But today, we are going to explore how that exact same slow motion effect might actually be happening to us in everyday life under much less extreme circumstances and without us even realizing it's happening. Let's bring this down to a totally everyday experience. Think about just walking down a busy street. Every single day, strangers walk toward us, they pass us in a grocery store, or they walk into our workspaces. Now, these fleeting brushes with one another might seem completely insignificant, just background noise, really, but psychological research shows that these brief moments actually set the stage for all human interaction. Your brain is making rapid-fire, split-second decisions during these encounters about whether to smile, say hello, or just awkwardly look away. Now, researchers have a specific term for a certain feeling we sometimes get in these moments. It's called intergroup anxiety. To put it in plain English, this is basically just the nervousness or unease someone might feel when interacting with people of different racial groups. It is a very common human reaction, and it's often based on simple unfamiliarity or even societal stereotypes. But what these researchers really wanted to know is whether this internal, hidden nervousness might literally change how our eyes and our brains process the physical world. Which leads us to a really massive question. Does nervousness around other races actually trigger that slow motion effect we talked about? To hunt down the answer, a team of psychological researchers from places like Princeton and Northwestern teamed up like detectives. They wanted to figure out if our internal, hidden fears could actually alter our visual perception of how fast someone is moving toward us. So how did they test this? The lab setup was actually incredibly simple. Just imagine you're sitting in a chair. Step 1, you just stare at a simple white cross on a black computer screen. Step 2, suddenly a face appears. It was either a black face or a white face. And then step 3, the face rapidly grows larger on the screen. Now that growing effect is just a classic visual trick used in labs to simulate someone physically walking toward you. Right after that, the participants were simply asked one question. How fast was that person moving? And the results? Honestly, they were absolutely mind-blowing. The researchers found that white viewers who scored high on intergroup anxiety, meaning they generally felt more nervous around other races, saw the black faces moving while much, much slower than the white faces. But get this, the viewers with low anxiety, they saw absolutely no difference in speed whatsoever. The anxious brain was literally hitting the slow motion button when a face of a different race was approaching them. But as a researcher, you can't just stop there. You have to ask, why is this happening? You have to test all the alternative theories. Like, wait, was this just a visual illusion where people somehow misjudged the starting distance of the face? Or were people simply applying a really harmful laziness stereotype, unconsciously thinking, oh, this person is of a certain race, so they must be moving slowly? They absolutely had to rule these other theories out to be sure. And this is exactly where Experiment 2 cracked the case. They ran the whole test again, but this time they added shrinking faces to simulate people walking away. And the results showed that the slowing bias only ever happened when someone was moving toward the viewer. When the faces were moving away, there was absolutely zero difference in the perceived speed, no matter what the viewer's anxiety levels were. This right here is a huge revelation. Think about the logic for a second. If this was really just about people applying a laziness stereotype, then the receding faces would have looked slow to the viewers too, but they didn't. This basically proves that our brains are functionally wired to only hit that slow motion panic button for things coming right at us. From an evolutionary standpoint, objects moving away from you just don't trigger fear. But approaching objects, they grab your full attention because your brain is desperately trying to assess a potential threat. Okay, but mechanically speaking, how is the brain pulling off this visual trick? Well, the researchers had one final theory to prove. They hypothesized that the slowing effect was happening because the anxiety actually made time itself feel like it was expanding inside the brain. So instead of just asking about the speed of the faces like before, they asked participants to use their internal clocks. They essentially had them count the seconds out loud to measure their perceived passage of time while watching the screen. So it all plays out in this really fascinating chain reaction. First, the anxiety is triggered. That anxiety then acts like a physical brake on your internal clock. Time literally feels to you like it's stretching out. And finally, because your internal clock is ticking slower, your brain just assumes the person walking towards you must be moving slower too. It's wild. Your internal fear stretches time, which in turn completely warps your visual judgment of speed. Now, you might be sitting there wondering, all right, neat lab trick, but what does this actually mean for me in the real world? Well, this matters immensely for our daily lives. This isn't just some clever illusion on a computer monitor, it's a profound revelation about how our unconscious fears can alter reality before a conversation even starts. It shows us that prejudice and anxiety don't just sit in our thoughts or feelings, they actually corrupt our basic visual perception of the physical world around us. The researchers summed up the gravity of this perfectly. They noted that the simple act of moving toward one another is a necessary precursor to social interaction. Just moving towards someone is the foundation of all positive contact. If our visual biases are disrupting this very first step by making us feel threatened and physically warping our reality, well, it sets a pretty rocky tone for the entire interaction before anyone even speaks a single word. So, the very next time you're out and about, walking down the street, passing strangers in the grocery aisle, or just sitting in a coffee shop, take a quick moment to think about your own perceptions. If a hidden anxiety can actually stretch time and slow down reality right before your very eyes, you really have to ask yourself, who else is your brain viewing in slow motion without you even realizing it? It definitely changes how we see the world and how we see each other. Thanks so much for watching this explainer, and keep staying curious.